Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco, comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
Listen to the 48 Hours podcast for shocking murder cases and compelling real-life dramas from one of television's most watched true crime shows. Go behind the scenes of each episode with award-winning CBS News correspondents and producers in Postmortem, a weekly deep dive. Listen to 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts.
A note to listeners, the following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
And basically, even if a prosecutor is not aware of information, if law enforcement is aware of it, it is deemed that the prosecutor's office, because they work hand in hand, it's deemed that the prosecutor's office also has that same information. He is not fulfilling his obligations as required by Brady v. Maryland that he discloses this information. He is not doing it himself, and it is a requirement mandated by the Supreme Court that we do these things, and he's just not doing it. He's not doing his job. He's not doing his job the way it's supposed to be done.
I can't go another day without, he's a very disturbed person, and I believe that him and Colby were the ones that did this. He said something about he threw up afterwards. Yeah, after he had killed somebody.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman.
In 2013, when Molly and Colt went missing, Craig Ladd was the district attorney, and he is still the district attorney of District 20, which includes Carter, Johnston, Love, Marshall, and Murray counties.
The job of the district attorney is to appear in all trial courts and prosecute all actions for crimes committed in their respective districts.
In the state of Oklahoma, the district attorney is an elected official who must answer to the registered voters in their district. That is why voting is so important, because your voice does matter.
Craig Ladd has not had any opposition to his position, and currently he is the only person running for the district attorney in District 20.
How can someone run unopposed for over a decade? We just heard a rumor that Craig Ladd might be retiring, so we called his office, and they told us that they have no information on whether or not Craig Ladd is retiring or if he is running for re-election in November.
Joe Russell was the sheriff for over 16 years in Love County, and the sheriff is also an elected official. We have learned over the past few months that District Attorney Craig Ladd, along with former Sheriff Joe Russell, have multiple Brady violations.
We wanted to find out more about what a Brady violation is. And that is why today we are very excited to have Captain Aaron Jones on the show. Captain Jones is a police officer with the city of Cincinnati, and he is also an attorney. Captain Jones created a comprehensive document about the Brady List with Bill Amato, and he explains what it means if you are on that list. Nice to meet you, and thank you so much for coming on to speak with us about the Brady List. We came across your very in-depth document online, and we had a couple of questions because we're working on a case right now that has several officials who are on the Brady List. And our audience is really curious about what the Brady List is. And we felt like you were the only person who could really help us understand that.
Okay. Well, hopefully I'm able to help you out.
Fantastic. Yeah, so we have a couple of officials. We have a local DA in Oklahoma. The case takes place in Love County, Oklahoma, and it's about two missing young people who we know that it was a double homicide. The local sheriff there was convicted of some corruption down there, and as well as the DA, the local DA there, has apparently a long history of questionable activities, and both of these individuals have multiple violations on the Brady List. And just for our audience's purposes, if you can kind of explain what the Brady List is and when either a DA, a lawyer, or a law enforcement official, when they get on this list, what does it mean?
Okay, and so generally how it's described is the Brady List. And just to go back a little bit, prosecutors have an obligation to turn over what is exculpatory information to a defense attorney. And so Supreme Court cases and how those cases have been interpreted, any information regarding witnesses, whether it may be a police officer, maybe sheriff, it's usually law enforcement who we're talking about. If they come into possession, the prosecutor's office or the law enforcement agency comes into information that about a particular witness, and that information could be damaging to that witness's credibility in a trial. That information needs to be verified, gone over by the prosecutor's office, and what happens is you need to give that over to the defense. You have to disclose that to them. And so it's not just dishonesty, it could be criminal charges. Basically, any information that you have about a particular witness that could damage the credibility of that witness, you have to turn that over to the defense so they may review it and may use it to challenge the witness should they have to give testimony. In addition, although the obligation originally was on prosecutors, any information that a law enforcement agency has about a particular witness, they need to share that information as well with the prosecutor. And basically, even if a prosecutor is not aware of information, if law enforcement is aware of it, it is deemed that the prosecutor's office, because they work hand in hand, it's deemed that the prosecutor's office also has that same information.
So it's the responsibility of both the DA's office to make sure they get all the relevant information pertaining to this case, regardless of whether or not they receive it. So it's their job to investigate this case beyond what the law enforcement official has brought to them, correct?
Correct. And so, for example, what a lot of prosecuting agencies here where I'm from, here in Cincinnati, we have the city prosecutor's office. We also have Hamilton County, which surrounds Cincinnati. Prosecutors will reach out on an annual, sometimes semi-annual basis, and they are requesting information. They are asking for information from the law enforcement agencies, reminding them, giving them guidelines, basically saying, if you have information or sustained findings or cases against, and normally in my world, we're talking about law enforcement officers, that information needs to be shared with us. That information needs to be provided to us. And most federal, at least my experience with federal criminal prosecutions, the federal prosecutors will send out for every single case that they do a deep dive on the officers themselves, looking at their background, so there is no surprise later. And so, yes, law enforcement agency has it in their possession. It is assumed, it's deemed that the prosecutors also have it in their possession, so it would behoove them to make sure they're doing the proper requests and the investigations that they need to for officers before they testify.
Can you give us some examples of violations of the Brady List so people can understand in layman's terms?
And so one quick thing I wanted to say is, and what we call it the Brady List. What it is this is information that the prosecutor's office has received about, again, normally we're talking about law enforcement officers. And it could be a law enforcement officer had a DUI conviction. A law enforcement officer had a string of sustained citizen complaints that may have to do with, may have a racial component. Anything that goes to show that the witness is either not credible because of maybe deception, maybe because of some sort of bias, criminal convictions. And so if an officer is found to have been dishonest at some point during their career and there's a sustained finding, that would need to be turned over to prosecutor's office as well. So you're talking about dishonesty, you're talking about criminal convictions, you're talking about cases where there's findings of some type of bias on the part of the officer. All of these things could damage that officer's credibility later on when they're trying to prove their case, meet the elements of their case.
Is it unusual for district attorneys to have multiple violations against them?
And so, again, that's normally what I'm dealing with is, or at least my experience has been with law enforcement officers. Now, to hear that a district attorney, whether he or she has some type of findings, and can you suggest what the findings are? Can you tell me what those findings are?
It's District Attorney Craig Ladd in Oklahoma. He oversees 5 counties, and he has prosecutor misconduct, failure to disclose Brady material in Johnson County, prosecutor misconduct, attorney misconduct, prosecutor misconduct, cooperative misconduct. This is all in the last 5 years. And prosecutor misconduct, attorney misconduct, failure to disclose Brady material in Carter County. And Carter County is where we're talking about.
And just listening to that is this prosecuting attorney, again, usually Brady material is used to either challenge or advise the other side that there may be some credibility issues. That's normally when they're a witness to a case or they're going to testify or whatever it may be. And so are you suggesting that the prosecutor is going to be testifying at some point, or he's a witness in a case at some point, and that's why we're saying he's on the Brady list?
This one says, well, he's got multiple. So we'll look at one. Prosecutor misconduct from May 4th, 2017. And it says the complaint has been forwarded to the Bar Association, failed to inform CLEET of the conviction of a former law enforcement officer who pled guilty to sexual battery and was required to register as a sex offender. So he failed to give that
And
information.
so in that sounds like in that particular case, again, the onus is on the prosecutor's office to disclose that information to the defense. And based off the facts you just read there, taking them on their face, it sounds like the prosecutor was aware that a police officer had a conviction, and it sounds like some type of sexual crime, and did not disclose that to the other party. And it sounds like that was a violation of his Brady obligations to turn that over. And so I don't know if the prosecutor himself is on a Brady list. Now, if I was a defense attorney, what I would like to know, if the prosecutor is engaged in misconduct in the past, I guess I can theorize, yes, that would probably be something that the defense attorney should be aware of, and that hopefully their prosecutor's office are providing that information to the defense attorney.
Yeah. I mean, he has another one here that says failure to disclose Brady material. He has not disclosed to defense counsel or defendants that his assistant district attorney was named as a potential witness in an appeal to answer for withholding of exculpatory evidence and destruction of evidence in a capital murder case.
And so it sounds like less that the prosecutor himself would be on the Brady list, but more of that this prosecutor is not fulfilling his obligations under Brady. And again, that is to turn over the exculpatory evidence to the defense, whatever issues they may have that could challenge their credibility as a witness.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you're in that position as both a law enforcement official and a district attorney or work for that district attorney's office, if you're on the Brady list, it's not a good thing, right?
No, it's not a good thing. And it's going, in some cases, you may never be able to be used as a witness, right, and as a law enforcement officer. So let's say you have a sustained finding of planting evidence on defendant, right? You arrest someone, it's the same finding that you're planting evidence. It's highly unlikely that person is ever going to be a useful witness. You know what I mean? Someone who's engaged in deception and lying, it makes it very difficult for them to be used as a witness in the future. That is why a lot of police departments, if you lie, you die, basically. That if you lie and you have dishonesty, a significant dishonesty on your record, a lot of departments will let you go because you cannot be used as a witness anymore. And that's one of the main job requirements of a law enforcement officer. Not only do you arrest, but you're going to have to testify at some point. Now, some things are going to be minor or more minor. An officer has a DUI conviction. What happens is that's turned over to the prosecutor's office, and the officer is now on the, quote, Brady list. And that has to be turned over now to defense going forward that, hey, by the way, on your case, this officer was convicted of driving while under the influence. It will be a case-by-case basis now. How does that affect this officer's testimony? And maybe it may be totally unrelated. The case may be for a shooting. The case may be for a theft. How important is it to this officer's credibility that the officer had a DUI in the past? And so it's going to be a case-by-case basis as they look. Deception, biases, those are really going to weigh in on somebody's credibility, if you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. He has another complaint against him. It's called cooperative misconduct. And it says, as District Attorney of Oklahoma District 20, Craig Ladd had a constitutional duty to ensure that all Discover requirements are complied with within his district. He failed to do so when his Assistant District Attorney, Fern Smith, when she failed to file a Burke's notice. What does that mean? Does that mean that he's allowing misconduct within his office?
That I don't know from just what you're reading. I'm not sure. Just like any agency, supervisors are going to be held somewhat responsible for the actions of their subordinates, right? And so if it was a failure of supervision on his part that his subordinate, his assistant attorney needed to do, that ultimately it's his office as a whole will be held responsible, and maybe it's a failure of supervision. And so, and again, just to go back, the Brady list, getting on the Brady list, this is all about you, actions you've taken that impair your ability to be a credible witness. And so I don't know if the things you're talking about here with this particular prosecutor, it really sounds that qualify for the job and look at all the mistakes that he's making and all kinds of different things there. I don't know. All of this stuff would be very impactful to put him on a Brady list again, but this is for him having to testify or be a witness in some other trial.
Okay, there's another one here that just happened. I'm just curious about what you think. this. It says that District Attorney Craig Ladd and his investigator, Mark Sanders, participated in an undisclosed plea agreement in an effort to avoid prosecuting a Carter County Sheriff's deputy for his part in the death of Jared Lakey. I mean, that put him on the Brady List for attorney misconduct.
And so again, the Brady List is not for attorneys necessarily that have engaged in misconduct. The Brady List is for witnesses that may be used to prosecute a case, and this information is damaging to their credibility. And so, and what's this prosecutor's name again?
Craig Ladd. He's a district attorney in Carter County, Johnson County. And
did you say?
It's Stephen Craig Ladd, L-A-D-D.
L-A-D-D. So Prosecutor Ladd, him going on a Brady List, that would be okay. Prosecutor Ladd goes on this list. If we are going to use Prosecutor Ladd as a witness, if Prosecutor Ladd had to testify at some point, right? If Prosecutor Ladd was going to be part of cases, that's how he would get on the list. And so I'm extrapolating here. A defense attorney may say, well, this prosecutor has biases. This prosecutor is engaged in deception. This prosecutor has done these things, but the prosecutor is actually not testifying. The prosecutor is actually not a witness in the case. And so to say he's on the Brady List or to try to complete those two or put those two together doesn't go smoothly, that round peg in the square hole, because the Brady List is about witnesses, not prosecutor misconduct.
And who makes the grievances against this? How does this person get on a Brady List, even though it's not for DAs, mostly it's just for witnesses? Who would file a grievance, and how does that happen?
And what do you mean, and file a grievance?
Well,
what do you mean?
Well, I mean, obviously this list was created as, it almost seems like it's kind of like a watchdog for law enforcement, primarily for law enforcement, and also witnesses and prosecutors. So and let's say this: the Brady List is not really for anyone other than law enforcement. I can see possibly a government official possibly being on there, but in reality, the Brady List is about law enforcement officers. And so the obligation, it's not really a grievance; it's the obligation of the law enforcement agency. If they become aware of this information, they have to disclose it. It's not, well, you wait for a grievance or you wait for a complaint and then you respond. If tonight here in my police department we had an officer convicted of DUI, it's our obligation to hand that over to the prosecutor's office without them asking. It is our obligation to turn it over, and that's what we're talking about. You don't wait for a complaint. If we become aware of it, you have to disclose it and hand it over, and then ultimately the prosecutor's office will review and they will make the determination of whether or not the number one, the person goes on the list, and number two, if that information is disclosed to the defense. Now, usually, I think what most prosecutors do, especially if they're knowledgeable and aware, I think sometimes they will err on the side of caution and make sure that all information is shared.
Okay, so basically he gets on the list. This district attorney got on the list because he failed to disclose Brady material. Is that correct?
That would be a problem, right? That would be a problem for him moving forward. I just don't know the information you have that you're saying the prosecutor has actually been placed on that particular county's, however, list that they create.
No, we're looking at the forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, the Giglio Brady List, like the actual list, Giglio Brady
you're
list.
Actually looking
yeah,
at
we're actually looking at the list, and he is on the list, and he has these 5 infractions against him.
Okay, then what they're saying is, if he's on the list, what they're saying is that he has some sustained findings, or there's information that could impair his credibility as a witness, and therefore that information has to be turned over to the defense in any case. And so my belief here is that he may not be testifying, but what they truly believe is that any case that he is prosecuting, any case that he's involved in, the defense needs to be aware that he has had these infractions, because what they're going to do is, any case that he's a part of, the defense attorneys, what they're going to do is take that information and attempt to destroy his credibility as a witness or as a prosecutor.
Is there like some sort of limit as far as how many violations you can have as both a law enforcement and a DA, where there's an investigation into their, not only their credibility, but their ability to continue to do their job?
I don't think that there's not a minimum or a maximum. It's all going to be case by case. Again, some are going to be minor. We've had officers in our department where they're in the academy, and what happened is they forgot to bring a piece of equipment. And when they were questioned by a supervisor, they were dishonest about missing the piece of equipment, and they received a very minor infraction. That infraction made it on the Brady List here in Cincinnati. And so 25 years later, that information is still there. Now, a prosecutor will look at that and make a determination. Are we going to actually disclose that? Is that something that's even relevant anymore 20 years later, right? And so there's no minimum, there's not a maximum number. It's going to be case by case, how egregious is the case and how egregious is the behavior, and how does that affect the credibility of that person to be able to testify and be a witness in a criminal trial.
So theoretically, someone can have like a DA, like Craig Ladd, he could have a litany of Brady violations on the list, and he can continue to unwaveringly do his job unimpeded and continue to do it for the term of his what he was elected for.
And I'm assuming this is an elected position for this?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Well, and so I think there are a couple ways that he would continue to do it as long as he continued to be elected into the position, unless there's other avenues too. And this is outside of the Brady discussion. But there's a code of conduct. There's ethics. Every state has some type of regulatory agency, their bar association, over attorneys in those states. If there are repeated violations, right, the law license can be affected. The law license, where they can have suspensions, or you could have your law license taken away by your accrediting agency of that state. But no, there is no magic number. You would hope at some point, if someone is so egregious and they cannot do their job because they have so many violations, and being able to do the job, such as prosecuting a case, and you're unable to do so effectively because a defense attorney can point out all these issues, you would hope at some point that would be enough. But no, there is not a magic number.
Craig Ladd, in July 2022, he had a complaint against him, and it said that Craig Ladd has not disclosed to defense counsel or defendants that his assistant district attorney, Fern Smith, was named as a potential witness in an appeal to answer for withholding of exculpatory evidence and destruction of evidence in a capital murder case. Can you explain that a little bit?
And read that again. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Craig Ladd has not disclosed to defense counsel or defendants that his assistant district attorney, Fern Smith, was named as a potential witness in an appeal to answer for withholding of exculpatory evidence and destruction of evidence in a capital murder case.
And so from what you're reading to me, it sounds like they're holding the prosecutor Ladd accountable because he became aware that his assistant attorney did not provide exculpatory evidence as required, and he did not report it. So the prosecutor Ladd himself, he became aware of Brady material, right? Brady material, information regarding one of his employees and now he's a witness, and so now his credibility is up to being judged as a witness. And it sounds like the prosecutor became aware of the information, and he himself did not disclose that information. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like his lower attorney did not provide the information he was supposed to. Prosecutor becomes aware of it, and then he himself did not disclose it when he was supposed to disclose it. If you follow what I'm saying.
No, it makes sense. And it's kind of in alignment with the case that we're working on, where there's been a lot of evidence that's been destroyed and exculpatory material discarded. And
so if he is the prosecutor, he is the prosecutor of that county, he has the ultimate say on what information is going to be provided. And what they're supposed to do is follow the law. And it sounds like he's had several, I don't know if these claims have been, or these allegations have been substantiated, but it sounds like he's had a lot of allegations that he has had information that was exculpatory, that was information that the defense was entitled to under Brady, and that information was not shared with the defense attorney, which then puts them behind the eight ball, because they need to know and have the right to know any information that the prosecutors have or law enforcement has that could destroy the credibility of that particular witness.
Once you're on the Brady list, then does it stay forever, or is there a limited time?
And so different states and different jurisdictions, I hate to tell you this, but it depends. Some jurisdictions give officers and give law enforcement, give them the ability to come off the Brady list or to be able to appeal it. Other jurisdictions, there is no appeal process. You go on the list and you stay on the list until it's no longer really relevant, right? And so I'll give you, again, the situation. An officer gets a DUI early in his or her career. 25 years later, he has a very important murder case. Is it important to disclose that this officer had a DUI conviction 25 years ago? And so you may still technically be on a list, but the prosecutor may make a determination that is no longer relevant. It is so old, it has nothing to do with this, and has nothing to do with the officer's credibility. He or she has led an exemplary career since then. We're not going to disclose that. Other jurisdictions, other agencies, may have an appeal process. They may have their own internal rules that say we remove certain things after 10 years, certain things after 15 years.
Who puts you on the Brady List? Who physically puts you on the Brady List? Can it be a civilian? Can it be another, like a defense attorney who's not happy?
It's going to be the prosecutor's office. It's going to be the prosecutor's office. Either the law enforcement agency becomes aware of information and they share it with the prosecutor's office, or the prosecutor's office becomes aware of the information and then they create this list, right? The list of the officers, and in this case, the other government official here, the prosecutor, would go on it.
So the prosecutor himself puts himself on the list? I'm not sure I follow.
And I think that that's a very unique situation. I don't think the prosecutor put himself on the list, right? I would think that someone else in that jurisdiction or someone else made a decision. And so you say you have this list. Generally speaking, yes, it's the prosecutors that create and maintain the list.
So could it be a prosecutor outside the district that does it?
It could be. That could be a different, and each jurisdiction is going to have their own. Each jurisdiction is going to have their own. So maybe this prosecutor is not in his own area, right? It might be in another jurisdiction that prosecutor is going to have business in, or whatever it may be. Not having it in front of me, so I'm kind of
understand.
Speculating at this point. But yes, it's the prosecutor's office. It's going to be highly irregular for a prosecutor to be on his own Brady List. I've never heard of that. Heard of that.
That's someone who's being very, very introspective and honest.
Right. Well, and it's just, unless someone else, they were forced to put it, or again, it's another jurisdiction that's doing it.
So I have a question. This jurisdiction, Craig Ladd was put on the Brady List for several different infractions for Carter County and Johnston County, where I believe that he is overseeing. So Johnston County says this: the Johnston County District Attorney Office, and I'm reading this off of the GiglioBradyList.com. It says the Johnston County District Attorney Office is not in compliance with the nationwide public-facing Brady List, Supreme Court of the United States Brady Doctrine, U.S. Freedom of Information Act, State Sunshine Law, Open Government Act, Open Government Initiative, and Open Government Directives by the U.S. Department of Justice. Does that mean that they don't adhere to the rules or the principles of the Brady List?
At least that's what it's suggesting. There is not a national Brady. There's not a national Brady List. Each jurisdiction is going to be required to keep their own. Sounds like what they're suggesting is that these agencies, or these particular prosecutory agencies, are not following the spirit of Brady, which is that if you are aware of exculpatory information that could damage the ability of someone to be a witness in a case, that information needs to be shared with the defense. Routinely, the lists are made. They're made with law enforcement officers, and here in this case, the prosecutor. If that information exists, you're supposed to be on the list, and then that information is supposed to be shared with the defense attorneys on the cases that these individuals are involved in.
Yeah, so they're basically ignoring it to a degree and just kind of doing their own thing. If you're saying that the local area's responsibilities to do that, they have to keep up with it. It's not like there's no federal agency that's kind of overseeing this. That's what you're saying?
Yes, there's not a federal agency that oversees this. There is a United States Supreme Court case, Brady v. Maryland, that requires and puts out the information that gives all the different prosecutorial agencies in the country, these are the tenants, these are the principals, this is what your responsibility is. But there's not a federal agency that comes in and oversees this or regulates this. It is their responsibility. And the sanction for that, now the sanction is that, okay, let's say you do have a case and you did have an officer who should have been on the Brady List, or they were on the Brady List, and that information was not shared. Their testimony that case can be dismissed, thrown out, adjudicated in a way that the defendant cannot be charged. And so that's the sanction. The sanction would be dismissal of the case with prejudice, meaning the prosecutors engaged in prosecutorial misconduct. The charges are going to be dismissed against this individual, and you cannot bring those charges back. That's kind of the heaviest sanction period.
So that's good. It's good for people who feel like they've been wrongly accused in a district that has DA that has multiple Brady violations. Their attorney can come in and say, listen, you can't hear this case. These charges can be thrown out because you have past indiscretions and you've been on the Brady List for something like this.
Right. And so normally most likely it's not going to be a blank, right? You're going to have to show that this particular information regarding this prosecutor relates to this case and how they're passed, right? It's probably going to have some nexus. I don't think it's just a blanket, you cannot prosecute these cases anymore. It's probably going to be something related to the current case that you're in.
I hear what you're saying.
Or similar facts similar facts or similar circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be, look, prosecutor, you messed up on these 3 cases, so you can't prosecute any cases. It's going to have to be something that's in line where, yes, those particular issues, those particular items we needed to know about. Now, if the information is passed on, then it's up to the defense attorney to take that information and do with it what they need to do to discredit the witness, if that makes sense, right? If you give it to them, if it's passed on, then it's on now. It's now on the defense. We told you about this information. It's now for you to take that information and build your best defense case that you can. And it's ammunition they are entitled to. It's actually a requirement. You must give them this information because the criminal system here in the United States, you have the state, they're very powerful, and they're the holders of all the information. You have to provide that information to defense so that they can put on the best defense that they can.
Interesting. Question for you. The document that you put together that we went through, that which felt like it was very comprehensive, what possessed you to kind of create a document like that?
I've been with my Cincinnati Police Department now for about 25 years. I've had multiple positions throughout the department. I really got into Brady Giglio when I was our internal commander. I did the internal affairs as I was learning about the process and what the responsibilities were for my department to share information with our prosecutor's office. I developed some policies and procedures for my department to make sure that we were in compliance. Around that time, I started going to law school as well, becoming an attorney as well. And that's where that all began.
Well, it's really helpful because it helps people understand what's going on and what it means, because we've done a lot of wrongful conviction cases for documentaries, and we've gotten someone out of prison based on the Brady List. So thank you for doing that.
Right, where you have an officer who they did not disclose whatever issues, and then they were able to testify.
Well, it was actually a prosecutor who didn't disclose a gunshot residue test that was done on someone's clothing that came back.
Oh, okay.
That came back negative, and then they didn't disclose it to the defense. And then that person spent 27 years in prison. And then when they found out it wasn't disclosed, that was one of the avenues that the 440 motion that for their release for a new was considered. So yeah, it was huge. That stuff is huge. You being an attorney as well as a law enforcement, where were you a law enforcement officer?
I still am. Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, okay. For the city of Cincinnati?
Police captain here for the city of Cincinnati.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, I've worked with that department quite a bit. We did a television show called Police POV there years ago.
Oh, okay.
When we brought in the first body cams from Taser. And we kind of distributed them because you guys were at a trial. We actually documented it. This is very interesting stuff. So bottom line is, if you're on the Brady List as both a law enforcement and or a public official like a DA, it's not good.
No, it's not good. What it says is that if you're on the list, there has been credible information that's been provided that could affect your credibility as a witness. And it's so important, and whatever the information may be, that there is now an obligation for the state to pass this information on to the defense attorneys so that they may properly prepare their case, and most likely are going to challenge your credibility as a witness using this information.
So, and again, if you're an elected DA, being on the list is probably not a good campaign thing to have.
I would, basically what it's saying is that, at least from what I'm hearing about this particular prosecutor, is that he is on the list because of his failure to disclose evidence that's favorable to the defense on multiple occasions, or that he has employees or subordinates that are working in his office that are doing this under his watch, either under his watch or he should be supervising and they're not. He becomes aware of it, and he's not fulfilling his obligation as a prosecutor. And that's really what it comes down to. He is not fulfilling his obligations as required by Brady v. Maryland that he discloses this information. He is not doing it himself, and it is a requirement mandated by the Supreme Court that we do these things, and he's just not doing it. He's not doing his job. He's not doing his job the way it's supposed to be done.
Enough said. Yeah. Well, thank you for clearing that up. This case is kind of a minefield, and it's been going on for about 9 years now, and we're trying to get some resolution to it. And the more we've dug deeper into this, we find out the investigation was botched from the beginning, and because it's a rural community crossing over a couple county lines, and no one was really taking full responsibility for it, and then the state had to come in too late. And as you know, as a police officer, those first crucial hours in a case, especially a double homicide, are the crucial points in the investigation.
Yes, sir.
It's been tough. And so we appreciate you kind of giving us a guideline and an explanation, because a lot of the citizens in that area who are listening to the podcast have discovered their local DA and the now defunct sheriff who was taken out of office after he was charged with multiple felonies and then got squashed down to a misdemeanor, but was taken out of his job. That's a whole nother story that went to a grand jury. But it's interesting. They wanted to know what this Brady List is. They knew it wasn't good. Everybody was
No,
been
it's not
posting.
good.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
taking the
much.
time to talk to us and explain that. It was a
For sure.
great explanation. The document you have. Would you mind us sharing that document to our listeners?
No, I don't mind it at all.
Fantastic.
Great. Thank you so much, Captain Jones. We really
All right.
appreciate it.
Next, we have a recording that was given to Paula a few years after Molly and Colt went missing. And this person reveals some interesting new information, including a potential suspect in Molly's murder.
Please note that we have used voice enhancement to disguise this person's voice in order to keep their identity safe.
Following him at the time, because I did see them, people he showed me that were following him, but he was really out of it. I grew up with this guy. I knew him my whole life, and he was really out of it, and he left, and I never saw him again at that time until he got clean, and he went back out there to Oklahoma. He was married to,
Okay.
yeah.
What's his name?
His grandma is like a real big somebody in the town. She donates a lot to the schools and the churches and stuff, I guess. They call her, but I don't know her real name.
And she lives in Love County?
Yeah.
Okay.
God, I'm just shaking. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But I can't go. I can't go another day without, he's a very disturbed person, and I believe that him and Colby were the ones that did this. He had said the reason why I started asking questions in the first place, because after he went out there and went back for like 10 months to a year, he left and came back out here on a bus. This, obviously happened before he came out in 2013, and then I've been seeing him ever since he came back out the second time. But the first time when he'd come, he was with a friend, and I overheard him say it's another friend that has known him his whole life, friend of ours, and he said to him when he didn't think I could, he didn't know anybody was listening, and he said to him that he really thought that they were going to pin those two kids on him. And I thought that was really weird, and I didn't know what he was talking about or anything. But sometime later, I asked him what he was talking about, and he told me about the missing kids. And so I researched it, and then every so often I would just ask him a question, a different question. And so he had left his wife, and he was out there working out there at the sheriff's house out there. And there's a lady named, they called her, or I think,
Yes.
that was there as well, that rode with him out there to go to work. And I believe she knows what happened. And I think Khan just brought them out there, and I'm not sure why. He said he just kind of was, he doesn't remember a real good time frame. He was out of his mind, really at the time, but he said, because I said, well, what do you suppose happened? And I kind of had like a vision, and I said about the burn pit, and he says, how do you know about that? And I said, well, I can kind of just see it, and there's other cars and a tractor, and he said that was, how did I know that? He wanted to know. And I just told him, I just could see it in my mind. But he said, and forgive me if some of this is just, these are some horrible things that I don't like to have to tell you. But
Well, I'll tell you, there's nothing you can say that I probably have not heard over these 5 years. I've heard it all. So, whatever he said, I need to know. So it's fine. It's fine.
he said something about he threw up afterward. Yeah, after he had killed somebody. He didn't, this was had to be very tread lightly here and there, just ask every now and then, certain different questions. And he said something about a sawzall and I believe in bags, and then they used quads, I believe, maybe.
Used what?
Not quads, like quad bikes, four-wheelers.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, to take them up is all I know, and put in something about putting and there was many holes you could put them in or whatever. But he said that I believe Khan was the one who had the phone, but that he didn't remember telling me this, but he told me, and I put my life on it, that the memory card, he buried the memory card from her phone in his grandma's front yard in the flower bed. And I asked him about that. I told him that later, and he goes, I didn't tell you that. And I said, yeah, you did. And he didn't remember, but he's got some issues. That surprised me, but he had told me before that he was riding in the back of some stolen, I think Khan was driving, and it was a stolen Charger, a white Charger, and they ran from the cops, and they got just past the cattle guard, and he had said that Molly was in the seat next to him. And then I just didn't say anything at the time, but later I tried to clarify, and he said no, he didn't know Molly, And he would always say when I asked him, where are those kids at? And he would say he didn't know where those kids are. But he would say things, these are all facts that he was there. He was there for like a month out there at the sheriff's house doing whatever kind of dirty work. And I think whatever happened, they were brought out there by Khan for some reason or another. I don't know. He was seeing her, or if it was because of the sheriff, they owed money for drugs or what, I have no idea, but I think that you're right about Colt. He was not very happy, and I think that they did whatever for the remainder of the evening, and then I think that he got into it or started to get into it with one of the boys. I think at that point Khan had gone back to town already, but that he told her to run, and she ran, and I think caught up with her when she was making that 911 call, and then and he obviously I think that Colby is the one who went after him. Now, this is just from the last 5 years of me asking questions and whatnot. I wasn't there, so I can't say anything for a fact, but this is what I think happened. And I think that those two had to dispose of them. And then he drove out here in his truck, and he was a mess. He was a complete mess.
When did he come back out there?
In 2013, after, it was like a month after that happened, I think.
Was he with up until he left to come back out there?
He was with her until she, they were having a lot of issues, but he had left from there. I think he had tried to kill himself or something, but he recovered from that accident, and then he said he walked off one day and just walked off into the woods and stayed out there for a month. Well, the woods was over there on Long Hollow, and he was doing, he told me Colby was out there, and that chick was out there, and that they were just, working for the sheriff, and I don't know how come they didn't continue to come investigate him or question him. It's like they don't even know that he was there, but they did follow him out here, and they did have some sort of a tracking device on his truck back in 2013, but I think because he kept a lot of the sheriff's secret, his part of being there was covered up. He definitely knows what happened. He definitely was there, and I think that he killed her and helped dispose of their bodies. That's what I believe.
So has he mentioned anything about this son?
He did say that, because I guess on his way out there on Long Hollow to the place out there, he and took her. I guess he blacked out and he kind of wrecked his blue truck, not real bad, but just into a tree. And I don't know, I think he beat her up. He said he had sex with her, but he went running into the woods and he took his bag. There was a bag of stuff and his gun, or a gun, and he stashed it in the woods, and then he popped out in another area down the road. But when he got back to his truck, she was sitting there with his boots, and he couldn't figure out how she got his boots. But then later he stated that he came walking in with his boots on over at the house or wherever he was staying. That he was wearing his boots, and he couldn't figure out how he got them because they were in his little camper that he was staying in at the time. Those boots, I think, God, and he still has those boots, and he still has his phone that he had when he came out here the first time. It's in his possession. It doesn't work or anything, but I don't know if there's anything on it. But that phone he has still at where he lives. He was wearing his boots, and that was the only part where I ever heard his name. And he didn't know how he got them, but
In this travel trailer that he was living in, where was that located?
it was at some little trailer park. Like at a little, they called it, it sounds way better than it is. They call it a resort, I think.
Okay.
And he had just a little camper trailer there that he was staying in. I don't know if that was maybe just previous to him being out there as the property out at the sheriff or what, but I know he said he was out there. He just disappeared into the woods for a month. And I go, when you and her wrecked the truck, I said, that is right around the time those kids went missing. I said, did you see them on the road? Were you walking or were you there when the chase happened? And he said he didn't remember. He didn't know when it was that he wrecked the truck. And I guess they towed his truck to the impound. And maybe that's when they put that tracking thing on it or whatever, but he got it out of impound, and that's the truck he drove out here in 2013, but he left it out there in Oklahoma at Wanapao. When he came back, he rode the bus this last time, 5 years ago. I think it was 2014 or...
What color truck is this? Did you say blue? Okay.
Yeah.
The phone that you're talking about that he had, what's wrong with it? You said it don't work. What is wrong with that phone?
Well, it's just old. It just, quit working on him, but he keeps all his old phones, and he told me on a couple occasions he has the phone from when he first came out the first time.
Is there any way to get a hold of that phone?
No, I can't. I don't want to see him ever again. He's not allowed back to my property, and I have the sheriff watching for him and stuff, but I'm just scared to death.
I gotcha. Okay. I didn't know if you were still seeing him or not, but...
No, not
okay.
at all.
Do you happen to know what his phone number was back then?
Oh, gosh. I don't even know if he had given that number to me, because he didn't have it very long when we were together. When he came back out the second time, it only lasted him just a little while, but it would have been in one of my old phones if I did have it, and I don't know that I ever was able to contact him on that phone because he was really weird about it.
Okay. You keep saying that the sheriff's... Now, where Con lives is not the sheriff's property. That's his grandparents' property, but...
Right. Out there at that place, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so not necessarily Joe Russell's house, but where Con was living.
Where the grandpa's place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well...
And he explained to me, because I Google Earthed it or whatever, like so many times, and just looking, I don't know, I just couldn't shake this. It's from the first time I heard him say that, and I just couldn't believe that he was involved in it. I guess I just did not believe it until I saw the ugly side of him. He was sadistic and he was capable. I thought I was going to die. I thought he was going to kill me.
I'm sorry. How long ago was that?
Just this last week.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I am so sorry. Gosh, I'm trying to think of some things that I need to ask you, but if I come up with some questions, can you text or can I call you back? Or because I have some notes. Some of the stuff that you've told me makes sense to me, but what I did want to ask you, has he ever mentioned how they were killed?
I believe it was with the machete. I think he may have cut her throat with a knife. I don't know why I think that. And I do have a knife that he's had for a long time, though it's here now. But I had showed him a picture of that gun that I got offline. And I go, does this look familiar? And he said, where did you get that? And I just got it off of, offline. And he was all, now that gun's piece of crap that had been around for quite some time, and it was just a real piece of crap.
The gun?
Yeah. But I believe that those weapons that you did get, that were once recovered and no longer have, were what were used. Mostly, I believe his knife maybe had been original, but when it came to getting rid of the bodies, I think that the machete was. But what really got me was when he said he drew up afterwards. I don't know if that was after that he killed her or after they.
Did he mention dismembering them or anything?
He said something about a sawzall, and I'm sure that would be out at that property still.
I'm sure. Okay. Well, if I think of anything else, do you mind if I text you or call you? I prefer to text you first and just make sure it's okay to talk before I call on the phone. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No. Totally. Yeah, that would be okay. It just seems unreal. I'm just sick over it. It's just disgusting, and I'm really sorry.
It's okay. It's not okay, but it will be okay. And I'm sorry.
I can hear Molly, and I just want them to know. I want you to know who they are and just get them and bring them home. And it's just, and they have been tormenting him, but he just doesn't even just blocks it out. But he hears them all the time.
I'm hoping it's tormenting them all. They deserve it. They deserve it.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm so sorry, and I hope that this helps. And I wish I had realized earlier that my mom never liked him, or nobody really does. And I know why now, and I just can't believe how stupid I've been. But I hope this helps.
Well, I'm sure it will. And the name, I have never heard his name. However, that doesn't mean some in law enforcement haven't, and I will find out if they have. So I'm going to do some checking in on this. And can you tell me if went by a nickname?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But he had a lot of run-ins with the law, but they were wiped clean for some reason. So, yeah, you'll have to look into it.
I'll think this through and how I need to proceed with it, and then with the information, and then I will be back in touch with you, okay?
Okay, honey. Thank you.
You take care of yourself, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Next time on Partners in True Crime.
Right, I think she's dead on. She's 100% right on it. And I've seen a lot of dead bodies, a couple hundred homicides and death investigations, and then I was a deputy coroner before that, so I've seen a lot. She describes it to a T.
If you or anyone you know is suffering from a methamphetamine addiction, please contact the American Meth Addiction Hotline.
If you or anyone you know has been the victim of sexual abuse, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
For any tips relating to the disappearance of Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, please contact 833-4-MOLLY and Colt and they will be directed to the proper law enforcement agency.
All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content. Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and listen to Vi's original song, Take Me Back, written for Molly Miller.